Hello everyone, welcome to our Saturday Dhamma session. Missed last week's session, so I'll try not to talk too much, give more time for potential questions. Maybe there will be more, maybe there will be fewer. But I thought today to talk about reasons why we meditate. Well, one version of an answer to why we meditate. Because it's a perennial question among new meditators. We all have our reasons for coming to begin to practice meditation. Sometimes we have expectations. Sometimes we've heard from others reasons to meditate, and that appeals to us, and so even though we didn't think to take up meditation, it's called sasankarika. Our intentions to meditate are prompted by external sources. And that can be tenuous because without a initial intention to practice meditation, it's easy to become skeptical and hesitant in your practice, right? One thing about not being sure of the benefits of something is that you're less likely to put your whole heart into the activity, and so more likely to not get the results. It's a self-defeating mind state. Doubt is self-defeating. Is this going to help me? Oh, as long as you're caught up in that mind state. That's a big challenge of anything, really, anything new. Because it's hard to be confident or sure of what you're doing, but if you're not confident about it, it will be less efficacious. So one reason for talking about reasons why we meditate is this: to provide confidence through some intellectual understanding or appreciation of why one might want to meditate, and also to clear up some of the misunderstandings around why one should meditate, or what one should expect from meditation, or how to deal with expectations. It happens, it can happen that our reasons for continuing to meditate end up being different from the reasons why we initially began to meditate, or our expectations of the sorts of results we'd get turn out to be very different from the actual results that we do get. That's to be expected from anything new, but most especially from something like meditation, which is so foreign and so visceral, so much focused on the very workings of our mind in a way that we're not really familiar with. We deal mostly in the world in concepts, superficial abstractions, conceptualizations of what we think of things rather than what's actually happening behind the scenes. That's why it's so hard for us to find happiness and free ourselves from suffering, because we're not really working on a level that is in touch with reality. So we often are keen to impress upon meditators not to focus on expectations, because our understanding of what we might get out of meditation is often very different from how meditation actually works. That, and our understanding of what we really need, what's really going to help us, is often different from our expectations. You might expect meditation to give us a vacation, an escape from reality. And there are meditations that do that, certainly. But that's not really what's going to be of most benefit to us, for example. Anyway, the Buddha detailed 4 reasons to meditate. Reasons why people meditate. You could even call them 4 types of meditation, based on the results they bring. Because different meditations bring different results, but I like to think of it as the results of any sort of positive meditation, beneficial meditation, wholesome meditation, most especially mindfulness. I think mindfulness does bring about all 4 of these results. It's for the purpose of all 4 of these things, just not perhaps in the way that we think. And so some types of meditation are more focused on one or another. So the first one is Ditta Dhamma Sukha Viharaya Samvatati. Ditta Dhamma Sukha Viharaya. Vihara, dwelling. Sukha, dwelling in happiness. Ditta Dhamma. Ditta means seen. Dhamma means reality. Seen reality means, we'd say in English, in the here and now, or the evident reality. And the word is used to mean as opposed to in some hypothetical, theoretical, promised future time. For example, a religion or a spiritual path might promise heaven after you die. Heaven is such a terrible promise to make, such an easy promise to make. It's such low-hanging fruit, because you can't be called out on it most of the time. It's hard for anyone to call you out on it and say you're wrong, because, well, none of us, it's not here and now. It's not evidently visible. And anyone who does attain or get to the point where they would attain heaven that was promised to them isn't in a position to report back to us whether they did reach heaven or not. So we can't even get their confirmation. That's the sort of happiness that is not Ditta Dhamma. You can't see it here and now. It's not evident. There are other examples of this. Even enlightenment, let's say, is not Ditta Dhamma in some sense. I mean, it is, but in this sense, it means here and now, like right away. Because for most people, enlightenment is going to take some time, and so if that were your focus, it would be focusing on something that you really didn't have any evidence of. To some extent, I'd like to address that as well, but when we talk of Ditta Dhamma Sukha Vihara, we mean dwelling in happiness right away, like without having to believe, without having to wait or expect. And some meditations are much better at this than others, and much of the reason why people come to meditate is focused around this sort of result. We want to feel peace and happiness. We want, as I said, an escape, a vacation. But those sorts of meditation and that sort of result isn't really to our benefit. It isn't to our benefit on the level of actually changing the nature of our mind, our inclination. There are many meditations which focus the mind on a single object, and as a result are able to avoid those objects which would trigger a negative, pleasant, emotional response. And so it appears that you've attained something, you gained something, and you could say this is some kind of breakthrough in meditation, where you fix your mind on an object and you're able to stay with the object, and as a result you feel peaceful and calm and blissful. It can be a great experience. But it can also be addictive, it can be distracting, in the sense that your mind is constantly thinking about it, is constantly going back to it, as opposed to going deeper to learn and to understand the reasons why we react in the first place, why we suffer in the first place. So we eschew those sorts of meditation in favor of mindfulness, which is often disconcerting for new meditators who are expecting blissful, peaceful, calm states. Yet even mindfulness, and let's say more especially mindfulness, gives a deeper happiness in the here and now. It's just that it's hard, it's more challenging, and it's more engaged with those experiences that cause us suffering. But when we are mindful, even just for a moment, you can see for yourself in the here and now the happiness that comes from changing the way you look at something, the relief from stress and suffering that comes from changing your perspective on things, your perspective on problems, perspective on suffering, from something that is hurting me to something that has arisen, something that has arisen and will cease, from it being my pain, bad pain, problem pain, to just being pain. And when you're focused even on the body, on the foot moving, focused on the stomach rising, there is a great relief that comes when you're able to focus, when you're able to stay present. It's vitalizing, it's invigorating. It's also very challenging, and it's going to be interspersed with a lot of negative mind states, especially in the beginning. And because it's not fixed and focused on a single object, it's easily derailed. And so it's a challenge. And it can be stressful, because you still have to deal with the stressful habits of. Nonetheless, happiness is a big part of why we practice. There just needs to be a little bit of change in our understanding of what sort of happiness is going to come. It's not going to be constant blissful feelings, not if you're practicing this. But it's going to be a much happier state of being in general as your perspective changes. And you should be able to see that for yourself. It just won't be this blissful constant escape from reality. The second reason to meditate is jnana dasana patilabhaya, for attaining jnana, knowledge, and dasana, vision. So dasana here is like vipassana, if you know this word. Jnana means knowledge. And this has two different levels as well. On the one hand, there's many kind of knowledges and visions that can arise through meditation. Some people that claim to be able to see things far away, hear things far away, or come to know things that they shouldn't know, like other people's thoughts, to remember their past lives, which for most people is impossible. And more generally, to know answers to many of life's problems, to gain knowledge and vision on how to live your life. Such an important benefit of meditation. Answers will come easier. Even school, if we talk about worldly knowledge, school, even work, finding the answer to a problem at work, taking exams in school, writing essays, so much of it comes easier as your mind becomes more clear. So on the one hand, through deep states of concentration, which it's not involved with our practice, but there are meditations with these deep states of concentration where you're able to have what one might call magical experiences, supernatural experiences. But on the other hand, the clarity of mind that comes from something like mindfulness, something that we do, you could say it's much more practical, because just because you can read someone's mind doesn't mean you know how to engage with them mindfully. And on the other hand, you don't have to read someone's mind to know how to behave, how to interact. You just need a clear state of mind. And mindfulness provides that. The clear vision, being able to see a situation as it is and to know the answers, the ways to deal with it. It's a very important thing. Mindfulness helps. And the third reason is sati sampajanyaya, is just the mindfulness, sati, and clear comprehension, sampajanya. The Buddha considered these to be a result, a purpose of meditation. Mindfulness itself is a purpose. Clear comprehension itself is a purpose. Because mindfulness and clear comprehension are a perfect way to live your life, prevent you from falling into addiction, hatred, conceit, arrogance, fear, depression, anxiety. Sati sampajanyaya. If you can get to the point where you are mindful and clearly comprehending, seeing things as they are, it's not just about the knowledge and vision that you gain, it's about the state of mind, the clarity of the way you live your life. The difference between an ordinary, untrained, clouded, blind mind and a mind that is clear and free from obscuration. This is what mindfulness does for us. The clarity of mind, the sharpness of mind, the presence of mind. And the fourth benefit, of course, wouldn't be complete without the fourth purpose or reason for meditating, which is to free ourselves from free ourselves from defilement, asavanangkayai, to destroy the asawa, destroy the taints, the defilements, the things and the corruptions in our mind, the bad habits in our mind, the misperceptions, the wrong views, wrong inclinations, those things that cause suffering for us and others, for ourselves and others. It's the real reason why we meditate. So a good indicator of progress in meditation relates to corruptions in the mind. Do you still have greed in the mind, anger in the mind, delusion in the mind, like arrogance, conceit, and so on? Mindfulness helps root these out because they're harmful to us, because they rely on delusion and ignorance, especially ignorance, because mindfulness leads us to see clearly, right? And once you see clearly, you can't give rise to some ignorant mind state. Anger is an ignorance-based mind state. Greed is an ignorance-based mind state. Without ignorance, you never get greedy or angry. It's just ignorant to do so. By seeing things clearly, there's no reason to get angry. By seeing anger and greed clearly, there's no inclination to give rise to them in the first place. So, just a short talk on some of the basic reasons why we practice meditation. I think it's important to give these sorts of talks because, of course, a big part of what we do is the teaching of meditation, and in order, as I said, to give confidence to new meditators, to help them appreciate, not just giving them lots of promises, but to help appreciate and understand why it is and what it is that meditation leads to help correct some misunderstandings perhaps, and to elucidate the mechanism by which meditation leads to good things. It's not just magic. It's not like you say this magic mantra and poof, you become happy. No. The mantra is for the purpose of reminding ourselves of what's happening, keeping our mind fixed and focused on reality as opposed to our conception. So that's the talk for today. We'll take questions if there are any.
Yes, there are questions, so let's begin. Often when sitting, I hear something and immediately I dislike it or identify what made the sound or even combination of these things. What's best to note, hearing or the resulting experiences?
Just note whatever's clearest. They're all good to note. It's not magic, like there's not a magic solution or a perfect solution. You're noting and reminding yourself in regards to the nature of the experience will be beneficial. It will help to cultivate and create this clarity of mind. So usually we say to pick whichever is prominent, and there's no right answer. It's not like you'll pick the wrong. If you pick the wrong one, it doesn't work or something. An important thing to remember about meditation is it's a learning experience. So these sorts of answers will eventually come to you yourself as you start to see what works. You start to get a deeper appreciation that it's not magic, that you get a deeper appreciation of positive mind states and good habits and how to make the meditation work for you.
I switched from breath meditation to vipassana 1 year ago. In the last month, I feel restless and I feel suffering in daily situations. I'm also not so calm anymore. Is something wrong? What should I do?
So this is a good example of the difference between different types of meditation. You have an attachment to calm feelings. That sounds pretty clear, and an aversion to suffering. And mindfulness is working with those. Mindfulness is about working not with getting back to some sort of calm feeling or avoiding suffering situations, even avoiding restlessness. It's about dealing with those, cleansing the impurities of the mind by changing your perspective. Changing perspective is a very important concept to understand because it's a very integral part of mindfulness meditation, as opposed to changing the situation. See, one way of describing the difference between meditations is that one type of meditation changes the experience, and the other type of meditation changes your perspective on it. If you understand that, then you'll understand why there is a difference. With vipassana meditation, it's about seeing things in a new way, more clearly, as opposed to changing them. So your desire for calm is what's actually causing you suffering. Your aversion to suffering is what's causing you suffering. Your aversion to restlessness and so on. So the correct thing to do is to note to yourself restless when you feel suffering, disliking probably. Note the disliking. When you want to feel calm, wanting. This will change your perspective on things. You'll be less needy, less reactionary, more content no matter what things happen or don't happen.
For me, picking whatever is clearest is all right in theory, but whatever is clearest changes so quickly that I feel the need to jump around. Maybe I am being too quick to deem something as the clearest. Any advice?
Well, if there's lots of things happening, you're distracted, so you should note that. Distracted, distracted. After you note something, you should generally go back to the stomach or the foot, depending on what you're practicing. So again, this isn't what you should be focusing on. You pick what's clearest, you note it, and it disappears. What is important about your experience is that you're seeing impermanence, you're seeing uncertainty, you're seeing how things change, you're seeing the three characteristics, which is, of course, everyone will see these three. It's just not easy to recognize them, what you're seeing. But more basically and more easy to understand is you're seeing things more clearly than before. You're seeing how reality works. The fact that you see that the clarity changes, right? The object of the mind changes very quickly, jumps. It's a sign that it's working. This is what you're supposed to see out of meditation. But feeling the need to jump around, you should just note that needing or wanting or worried or however it is in the mind. You have to figure out what that is exactly.
Can I meditate without saying rising and falling?
There's lots of things you can note, but in our tradition we use a mantra to note. So if you mean, can I meditate without using a mantra? Well, not in our tradition. I would say it's inferior to do so. And so we don't recommend it.
Is it better to note pain or disliking if the pain is more prominent than the disliking? Since pain is the cause and disliking is the effect, should we note the effect even though it's less prominent?
You should note thinking when you think about this question, when you're confused or unsure.
Is discursive thought bad for meditation, such as thinking, rising, and falling?
I'm not sure what you mean by that exactly. In meditation, we don't have good or bad. We just note what happens. So if you are thinking, you would say thinking, thinking. But when you talk about thinking, rising and falling, that falling and rising, that's our practice. So that's the thought that we're trying to create. It's not discursive. I don't even really know what the word discursive means actually, in this context especially. But when you say to yourself, rising or falling, that's the mental activity we're aiming for. So in that sense, no thought isn't bad. It's just important to have the right thought or a clear thought.
When I note, there is mental chatter and music in my head all the time, so I get distracted and unsure if I should note it in between things. Any advice?
Oh yeah, you should note. Mental chatter would be distracted, thinking a lot. Music would be hearing. It's not all the time, but in the beginning it can be quite incessant, coming back again and again. Meditation builds patience, and in the beginning that's an important quality to cultivate. So being able to note things again and again when they keep coming back.
How can meditating treat perfectionism?
Well, perfectionism isn't necessarily all bad, because meditation, mindfulness helps you see imperfections, and so it makes you more perfect. To some extent, an enlightened being is still always working closer to perfection because they're still experiencing and seeing their habits, their imperfections of habit. Of course, their minds, you could say, are perfect, but their knowledge isn't perfect. And so their behavior, their speech, these things are still not perfect. But absolutely, until someone becomes enlightened, we're aiming for that perfection. The Buddha was said to be perfect. Even the Buddha wasn't perfect because his body wasn't perfect. He still had to die and he still got sick. But in many ways he was what we would call perfect. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but what you're referring to is perhaps this obsession with perfection. And in many ways, of course, perfectionism is a very bad thing. The point is to focus on what needs to be perfected. And that's a problem we have. We obsess over perfecting things that need not be perfected. The world can't be perfected. Our life, our and all of these things that I mentioned, our behavior, our speech, even our knowledge can't be perfected. We are not going to be perfect beings. We are still going to get old, sick, and die. And the world around us as well. So obsession with fault is a need. It's a desire. It can be worry-based. It can be view-based. So like anything else, you just have to note that obsession, that desire, or important is to note the experience of engaging in your obsession, because it changes your perspective on things. It changes your view from this is something I must do to this is not something I must do. This is something I can actually let go of.
Lust has been a great hindrance in my practice. I have tried many times to let go of lust, but so far I have failed. Any advice on how I should deal with lust?
Like anything else, you should come to see it clearly. Trying to let go of something, I've said this many times, it's an oxymoron in some ways. You can't try to let go of something because the trying is not letting go. It's a misunderstanding of what is meant, or what is the proper usage of the term let go. You don't try to let go. Trying to let go isn't a valid way of letting go of something. Letting go also means letting come. When we say letting go, or when you say in this case letting go, you really mean get rid of, right? Eradicate, kill off the lust. And that's not how it works. Even things like lust, you have to not exactly let them come, but you can't prevent them from coming just because you don't want them to come or just because you try to stop them from coming. The only way to stop things like lust from arising is through clarity, because as I said, they thrive only in the presence of ignorance, delusion, darkness. When the mind is clear, there is no delusion, there is no ignorance, there is no darkness, and so there can't be anything like lust. That's the purpose of the meditation practice on mindfulness, to see clearly. Stop trying to fix things, start trying to see them clearly. And that means being patient when you are lustful, because you have to note that as well. You'll get much better results if you just try to see the lust and everything associated with it more clearly, as opposed to having some desire for it to go away or not come back or some fear of it or that sort of thing.
When noting a feeling, such a feeling of pressure, pain, or itching, is it preferred to note feeling, or to be more specific and note pain, pressure, or itching? Or is it not important as long as the focus of the mind is placed on the location spot of the feeling?
It's going to be better generally to note pain, pressure, itching. You can, for some of those, note feeling, but pain isn't just a feeling. Pain is more. Pain is a specific. Better to say pain. For some feelings that are just feelings, you can just note feeling. But if it's pressure, if it's itching, especially if it's pain, you should note those.
Should I note more linear thinking with a different word than thoughts, views, or opinions that seem to spontaneously materialize in full in my mind?
I don't quite understand the question. I think you might be overthinking it. Don't think you have to be so concerned about that. If it's thinking, note thinking. It's a lot of thinking, note distracted.
I have so much suffering, and I have always tried to meditate to reduce it, and it worked. The problem is that I always give it up after a period of time. Now I really suffer, and I want to start meditating again, but I don't trust myself that I will go on with it. Something inside me tells me that I'll give it up after a period of time, so why start?
Why start? Because of how it changes you. I mean, the sense that you're getting is that you just go back to the same as before, but that's not really true. Imagine what your life would be like if you hadn't ever meditated. When you meditate and let's say it's what happened that you reduced your suffering. Well, that's an important thing to do. That changed your life, changed your direction. Who knows what you would have done if you hadn't have reduced your suffering. You see, it is changing you and it is changing your perspective. You now have this new perspective on things. The fact that you're able to say, oh, I meditated before and it helped, but then I went back to the way I was, is wisdom, is knowledge. It's something that you didn't have back then, so it's already changed you. Who knows what will happen when you meditate this time? It's always changing you. Even a little bit of meditation changes. So it can't be possible that you'll go back to being exactly like you were before. As far as trying to keep meditation continuous, well, it is not easy, but there are ways to facilitate that. Try and associate with good people who are also meditating. Join meditation groups, get a meditation teacher, that sort of thing. I don't know if you've done our at-home meditation course, but that's a good way to develop a daily practice. You can find links to it on our website and maybe read our booklet as well. Well, you have to read the booklet to start the at-home course.
Do you have any advice for having to check on people every 12 or so minutes for a few minutes at a time when I'm meditating? It seems to lessen the effectiveness greatly. I do try to do so mindfully.
So most likely, I can't say for your case, but most likely your conception of what is effective is not the proper expectation. I mean, it's not what the meditation is for. Mindfulness meditation isn't for some trance state where your mind is calm and clear and so on. It's about changing our way of interacting with the world. So you should focus more on the continuity, what is continuous between the meditation and the ordinary state outside of meditation. So as opposed to trying to get some state, when you come back from having checked on this person mindfully, you focus on the new experiences, and they might be different experiences, and that can be disconcerting. But you focus on them, and that cultivates what's important, is this ability to adapt, this ability to engage with whatever's present, and to see change. When you see your mind change after you come back from checking on someone, that's it. That's more important than entering into some calm, peaceful state.
How does one know if one is indulging in sleep? I sleep 8 to 9 hours each night, but try to get out of bed as soon as I wake up in the morning.
Well, ideally, you wouldn't sleep 8 or 9 hours a day if you were engaged in daily meditation. If you're being mindful throughout the day and practicing meditation once or twice a day, you shouldn't need so much sleep. So that's a good sign that you're indulging. That being said, no, I don't think there's anything to be said. I think that's true. But people do sleep more when they're working physically, of course. I still don't think you need more than maybe 6 hours of sleep. But that requires mindfulness. Most people require more mainly because of their stressful, unmindful waking state.
In sitting meditation in the evening, I have trouble staying awake. You've said in the past just sleep, then come back renewed. Does this lack of energy indicate some fault or a mindfulness deficit?
Yes, but so just sleep isn't the first answer. It's not what you should default to. If you're tired, just sleep. You should try to be mindful of the tired. And there's different reasons why you're tired. I mean, if you're exhausted after a long day's work, of course, you probably need a nap at least. But even then, you can note tired. But more common is this sort of tina midha, this sloth, this torpor of the mind, where the mind is stiff, unwieldy, unmalleable. And so you have to note that. That's important to be mindful of. Falling asleep, just sleeping should be your last resort. When you just aren't able to challenge the sleepiness. Don't feel bad if you do end up lying down and going to sleep. Worst case, your probably best uh, answer is to lie down and try and do lying meditation. Do fall asleep well when you wake up. Just continue on. But rather than lie down and say I'm going to sleep, try to lie down as a last resort.
How does one explain meditation simply to Christian parents?
Know thyself. I don't know, didn't Jesus say know thyself? Maybe it wasn't Jesus. But mindful meditation is about understanding how your mind works. It's about making yourself more meek, more humble, more understanding. It's about understanding how your mind works. It's nothing special. I mean, of course, is the most special thing, but by that I mean it's nothing exotic. It's nothing mysterious. Being more mindful helps you be a better person, helps you be a better Christian. I mean, it's hard to say because there are different kinds of Christianity, but the best Christians are those who love thy neighbor, who are able to free themselves from any covetousness, who are able to do what Jesus said. If someone asks you for your coat, what does he ask? If someone asks you for something, you give them that and some. Someone asks you for the coat on your back, you give them your hat as well or something. I can't. How can an ordinary person has a hard time doing that? Mindfulness helps you be that sort of person. You can throw scripture at them. There's a lot of good things in Christianity that you can say, helps me be this sort of person. And you can tell them, if they're concerned about you practicing, you can say, well, see what sort of a person I become through the practice. If I become a meaner, nastier, more stingy, greedy person, then I'll stop. But if I become a more kind and caring and compassionate and mindful and peaceful person, how can you fault me?
I think I built up a hatred of society at large after our response to the pandemic. Any advice besides mindfulness and maybe some metta? It's so relentlessly disheartening to me.
Well, you probably had those sorts of potentials in you already, which we most have. It's important to understand that that hatred is not a good thing, which it seems you'd probably do. But you should also note the feeling disheartened, the discouraged feeling, the disliking feeling of the disliking of the hatred, the disliking of your disliking. I mean, there's no quick answer. Yeah, metta would be a good one, but the more, the deeper answer is to note the disliking, to be mindful of it.
When I'm in situations that irritate me, I mutter and curse under my breath. I know that this is not right thought. Is it best to accept my non right thought or to try to change to right thought?
Well, that I wouldn't worry too much about that, because we have bad habits, and you're just trying to be mindful, and through mindfulness that will sort of change over time. Don't be too judgmental of yourself. See, it actually is a physical, words are just a physical expression, and they're not that big of a deal. What's important is the mind state behind them. Don't become too obsessed about the external manifestations. Just try and be mindful of them as best you can.
Is negative visualization a good meditation practice? I have seen it endorsed, but I am unsure of how useful it is.
I don't comment on other meditation techniques. Sorry, I don't know what that is, so I probably couldn't anyway.
What exactly is meditation? I do my studies very diligently with utmost concentration. Is this not meditation? What more you do as part of meditation other than concentrating?
Well, yes, I would recommend, if you're interested in learning about meditation in our tradition, you could read our meditation booklet. If you really want to learn more, you could sign up for an at-home course. I think that's the best answer here because, well, except to say that there are many kinds of meditation out there. I mean, meditation is some sort of mental training. It can be any sort of mental training, so I can't give you one answer. But I can tell you about our meditation, and you'll see that what we do is very different from just concentrating. There's concentration involved, but it's not the salient, most important quality.
The Buddha teaches that all things are impermanent. If one were to achieve freedom from rebirth, would even this be impermanent? And one could still be born again somehow?
No, the Buddha didn't teach that all things are impermanent. He in fact left out freedom from suffering. It's the one thing that is not impermanent.
Does free will exist? It feels like the mind arises from karma, and my only choice is seeing clearly or losing myself to mind.
Well, you should note that feeling. This isn't a useful question. I mean, it's good that you asked it, but it's important to understand that that's not a useful question. And you should focus on seeing reality as it is. You've got it right. The only choice is seeing clearly or losing yourself. But seeing clearly has an effect. I mean, it's not pointless. It changes things. It is a karma itself. Both of those things are karma. Losing yourself is a karma choice, or seeing clearly is a karma. So choose to see clearly.
How much concentration do we need to do insight meditation? How can we mix the two kinds of meditation?
Concentration is like the card, the movement of the cards. Samadhi pamukha. Concentration is the forward driving thing. I think it's the pamukha. Anyway, samadhi is the car driving, but you don't get out and push your car, right? You don't force the car to move. That's a much more clever way to make a car run. Mindfulness is that way, or the practice that we call mindfulness. You don't have to ask how much concentration do you need, like how hard we're going to push, or how hard we're going to be mindful. You just need to be mindful, and the concentration will arise, effort will arise, all 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma will arise just by being mindful. They'll balance each other out.
How bad is it to miss a few days of practicing, sitting or walking meditation, considering that I practice daily mindfulness throughout the day?
It's better if you don't, but I mean, I really can't answer that. It depends much more. So when you say you're practicing mindfulness daily throughout the day, well, to take that at face value, if that's actually true, then it's not bad at all, because you were still mindful. You see, there's really no difference between the formal meditation and the informal meditation. The point is that more likely you weren't all that mindful daily throughout the day. You were probably mindful some of the day, but you would have been much more mindful if you'd actually done formal meditation, you see. So that's the difference. Formal meditation supports your ability to be mindful throughout the day. Being mindful throughout the day supports your ability to do formal meditation. And in general, just any amount of being mindful is going to change things. It's going to clear your mind, purify your mind, calm your mind. It's going to order your mind. So much good comes from being mindful. The other good thing is that you can always start. You don't have to worry about I wasn't mindful in the past. It's not like there's a deadline or something, or a quota. Rather than worrying about the past, you should try and be mindful now. Start again, start again. Always starting again.
Bante, we've exhausted the first and second tier of questions, and we're quite near the end of the hour.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Chris, Ulu, Jim. for your help. I wish you all peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering.
Sadhu.